Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. It has been a while since my last upload. I'm sorry about that. It's just school can be busy and I just can't seem to find the time to record. However, I am back and I have a two-part card series going on this weekend. The first part will obviously be uploaded today. The second part will be uploaded following tomorrow. And yeah, it's featuring some festive froggies and fairies. Very cool. I just decided to have my frogs celebrate all the holidays. I did a Halloween card kind of similar to this, using all the frog images from Fawn. So the stamp sets I am using here are the Totally Awesome Stamp and Die set, the Don't Worry Be Hoppy Say What Spring Critters, the Frosty Fairy Friends stamp set, and the Holiday Party Animal stamp set. So for the frogs, I am just taking all the frogs, obviously. I have the log as well, just for some decorative elements. I got all the fairies with some greenery, if you will, and the little wands. And then I have some fun little hats and stuff for my frogs to wear because they will get cold if they don't have hats. So here I am inking it up with the Gina K Almagam ink and stamping it onto 110-pound white cardstock. So I have a white rectangle cut from 110-pound card. It is cut using the outside in rectangle stackable dies. I also had this snowfall background die. I was sure it's from Fawn, but I can't find the name. So if you know what this is, tell me. If not, there's lots of snowfall background dies you could use for this, or you could even just use like a hole punch, I guess, if you really wanted to. Nevertheless, I did cut it out. And here I am adding some ink blending. I am using worn lipstick on the bottom, just going in really light, and I'm using tumbled glass near the top. And I don't end up blending these two colors into each other. I just try to fade it out to white and then into the next color because I didn't really want to have purple on this card as it doesn't really match my color palette. I also didn't get to mention this, but I did cut out partially a rectangle from some pixie dust sparkle cardstock from Fawn, and then I also went over that with the simple stitched Hillside border die just to kind of have this snowy hill for the bottom half of my card, and that is why I'm only inking up a certain portion of this piece because the bottom will be covered by my snowbank. So yeah. While my ink is still drying, I'm adding some Gansai Tampi Sparkle or Starry Night watercolors to the background. I'm using the color White Gold, and I'm also adding some Distress ink in Salty Ocean just for some added splatter, you know, some extra fun, some dimension. So yeah. Alright, now we're into the coloring segment, which is probably the longest part of this video because there was so much coloring. I am starting off with E25, E27, E29, one of my favorite brown combinations, and I am coloring in this log image. typically using these same methods I always use for coloring. I don't seem to explore much with technique. I just kind of stick with what I like, and that is laying down my darkests, adding my mediums, and then going on to my lightests. And if I need to blend out with other colors, I will. And I am taking that same brown combination and coloring in the majority of this house because it is also made out of wood. So it only made sense to me to make them look kind of similar. Here I'm adding E25 and E23 to this kind of opening on the house, I guess, and then I'm using E33 and E35 for the door and the windowsill. Next I'm using some N4, N2, really light coloring for this chimney, and some E37 and E35 for these little rooftops. I'm using some BG000 for the windows, blending that out to BG11 and adding some Y15 to the centers to make it look like someone's inside the house. And I'm using those BGs for all of the snow elements on my mushrooms and on the little snowbanks and such. And then for my bigger frogs, I am using YG67, 65, and 63 and 61, my bad. And I am just blending my darkest to medium to lightest, and then I will go back and add some stippling to give them sort of a froggy texture. Warts, I guess, just some spots to make them look not so flat. I feel like it really adds interest to them and makes them look more like frogs. In almost all my frog images, I usually tend to go for this same color combination, so it's not really new. For my little froggy dudes, I try to usually make them a bit of a lighter shade of green, just to add some variation and interest to the card. And so for that, I'm using YG25, 17, and 03, darkest to lightest, the usual, you know. And I also add some of the stippling to him, you know, to make him look like a cute little froggy dude. So, yeah. Alright, for the fairies, I tried to make each one look a little bit different, add some variation yet again. So for this one, I decided to make her a ginger. So with that, I made her very fair. For her skin tones, I used E50 and E53 with some R20 for the cheeks. And then I used YR27, E99, and YR24 for her hair. It is probably one of my favorite combinations for red hair, and I didn't really try my hardest to blend it. A little texture is good, you know. And then I used N2 and N0 for like the Sherpa lining and stuff on her dress, BG11 and BG000 for her wings. I used the 11 closest to her body and blended that out to the 000. And then I used R39, RV34, and R83 for the pinks here. However, I do believe I swap out the R83 for an 81 later on. I was actually playing around with this combination. I never tried it before, and I think it turned out pretty good considering. So I thought it looked pretty neat, and it kind of really went well with her hair color, I think, in my opinion. For this next fairy, I am making her have some black hair, so I used N9 and N7. I don't really have any other better combinations for black hair, so if you have any recommendations, you know, leave them in the comments. And then I'm using E29, E27, and E25 for her skin tones. And And I'm adding some R83 for her cheek colors, and for her dress I'm using R39, R29, and R24, my bad, probably the most used red combination for that classic Christmassy look, if you will. And I'm using some N2 and N0 for the Sherpa linings. I do end up going back with some colorless blender because I feel like I went in just a little too dark with that. And I use the same BG combinations for all the fairy wings, so I didn't show it this time around. This fairy, I started off with her dress. I am using BG 15, 13, and 32. And I'm kind of going for turquoise color here. I'm using YG 25 and 23 for other accessories, and E35 and E37 for her skin tone. I'm adding some R83 for her cheeks, and I'm using that same N0 and 2 combination for the Sherpa linings. And I'm going in for some E49 or E4 and E47 for her hair. I also feel like black would be a nice combination, but I just felt like incorporating some other colors into my fairies. So here I am kind of laying out what I wanted to do. I didn't really have a solid plan or an idea when I was going into making this card. I just knew I wanted frogs and fairies, and I kind of just went from there. So I was just kind of exploring what I could do and how much I could possibly fit onto one card. I soon found out that I had way too many images, hence the part 2. I just decided to kind of use as much as I can for 2 cards. So I'm just so used to making slimline cards and being able to fit so many things. Here I am using some of these Sandy Beach accent dies, and I'm just going to be using them to cut little holes that I can fit kind of elements and stuff into later. I believe I cut 3 out. Here they are. It's just the same die 3 times. And I'm gluing down my snowbank panel, avoiding putting adhesive over these cut lines. With my snow glue down, I'm just taking my tweezers and kind of lifting up those edges and gluing in my little froggy dude, kind of laying things down again just to kind of make sure I like what I got going on. And then I will go ahead and start gluing things down with a mixture of liquid glues and some foam squares. Alright, here I am applying some multi-matte medium glue to the bottom of my little frog man, sticking him into the little snowbank and gluing him down on the top as well. And I'm taking this little frog who has these slits so that I can fit him behind the log. I'm only putting glue on the belly so that he can, stick there. And I'm using an acrylic block to hold him down so he glues nice and flat and not all crooked. And I'm gluing down some of this foliage as well, using the multi-matte medium. I don't believe I showed me coloring these, but I did use the same old combinations for reds and turquoises and stuff. I also don't believe I showed my coloring of these little presents and hats and stuff, but once again, it's very little coloring. Alright, now that my frog on the log, that rhymes, now that he's dry, I am gluing him down to the card behind my little snowbank here with the ATG gun, just to add some more dimension. There's a background and a foreground to this card, and I feel like that kind of helps emphasize that. And I'm just adding this little mushroom to the snowdrift with the multi-matte medium. I feel like when I was using the multi-matte medium and gluing things onto this glitter cardstock, it is important to kind of make sure they glue down nice and flat with the acrylic block, because the glitter cardstock can be a little hard to glue things onto. Anyways, here I am popping up this present and my little fairy lady with some of these foam squares, once again to emphasize the dimensions of this card. And I'm just gluing on these little snow pieces and stuff really to add to the scene. I don't think I showed me coloring these because they're so small. It's kind of pointless. I just used the BG000 for those, just to make them look kind of blue, and that's about it. So I'm gluing them onto the high points of my little house and my little log. Next, I have these little hats. I didn't show me coloring because, once again, they're so small, there's no point. But I did glue them onto my little frogs to keep them nice and warm because they are cold-blooded, and like, I don't even know if frogs can live in the winter or not. I don't think they can. But, you know, I just try to keep them warm. These are special festive frogs, and that's why they can live through the winter. But they were just kind of weird because I felt like the hats were just a little too big for these little frog heads, but I glued them on anyways because they're so cute. So here I am taking some foam tape, and I'm gluing, or I'm adding it to the back of this panel onto another one of these stitched rectangles I had cut out of just some plain white cardstock. This is to fill in the background because I have all those holes for the snow, so it will be kind of, you know, it'll add dimension, it'll look cool, and the snow will look white, which is important because snow is usually white. So after adding that foam tape, I am lining these up together using my Misty, or the stamping tool. This will just help make sure that they're lined up correctly and I don't mess it up. Here I have this card base, which is just some Michael's cardstock, and I am stamping out my sentiment using some Gina K Amalgam ink. So I am using both the Toadally Awesome stamp set and I believe the Festive Fairy Friends, so that my sentiment reads, "Hope you have a Hoppy holiday," or "We wish you a Hoppy holiday." Very cute, very punny. Next, I am taking the Let It Shine Petite paper pack, and I'm just picking out something I think would look nice for the background that this will be mounted onto. This paper pack kind of inspired the color palette for this card, which I kind of loosely followed. So I cut that down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I will be mounting that onto my card base using the ATG gun. Finally, I will be gluing on my panel piece with the ATG gun as well, lining that up as best as I can. Right, so I'm taking this banner, which is from the Everyday Banner or the Everyday Sentiment Banner die. I cut it out of corresponding turquoise cardstock, and I am just going to emboss some sentiment. This one says Merry Christmas. You could do any kind of sentiment as long as it really fits. So I just went with that for a friend who celebrates Christmas. So I will be heat embossing, so I'm using some Versa Clear to get that nice and sticky after using a non-stick powder tool. And then I will be using some white embossing powder. This is the Ranger Ultra Fine White, I believe. And I will be heating that up with the heating gun until it melts. And next, once it's cool and I can touch it without smearing it everywhere, I'm going to apply that to my card base and trim off the excess. Adding some final elements, I am gluing on this little fairy using some glue or foam squares. And then I'm just gonna go in with the final details I always do, which is the black glaze pen, the Jelly Roll clear sparkle pen, and the Jelly Roll white pen, and I believe 10 point. So I kind of added the glitter stuff everywhere. It is a very glittery card. I borderline almost did too much, but I mean, if you're me, or if you're my mom in this case, you can never have enough glitter on a card. So it is what it is. So do what you want with your own preferences. I added lots to the hair and to the fairy wings because they're fairies, so why shouldn't they be glittery, you know? And for some more glitter, because, you know, I went overboard, I am adding some stickles. I'm not too sure what kind this is, but it's got the rainbow kind of holographic glitters in it, which I felt like matched the glitter cardstock I used. So yeah, I'm just adding that on everything. And for the very last touch on this card, I'm adding some glossy accents to the windows to make it look like they're real windows. Just make sure you let this dry correctly and you don't smear it everywhere. And that's about it for this card. So feel free to like, comment, share. It all helps the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more. And I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.